Hello, authentically me beauties. You are beautiful. I'm so honored to have you here, listening to my show, listening to the medicine that moves through me and the guests that I have on this show. And I would love to introduce you to a special guest that I have here today, who is one of the most beautiful people that I have the honor of knowing. I love his heart, his soul, his medicine that moves through him and how he shows up and shares it with the world. Ladies and gentlemen, Zach G. That's what I call you. Zach G.
I
Welcome to
love
the
it.
show, my brother. Welcome. Welcome.
So very happy to be here. I
Mm.
love conversing with you, dialoguing, and sharing the medicine too.
Would you introduce yourself to the listeners? Just tell them a little bit about who you are, whatever comes up.
Yeah. So I spent most of my life as a fitness professional, and then I moved over to more of the life coaching sphere when I realized that when people wanted to lose weight and build muscle, they were really trying to fit that into the core of their entire life. And so now I'm way more on the spiritual side of practices and full congruence and alignment rather than just body.
Mm, yeah. It's interesting because I know that we recorded an episode last year that was not published, and I invited you to come back on because we both have just grown so much since that recording. It's amazing what can happen in a short amount of time. Um, and I don't even like see you and think, oh, he's a trainer. Oh, he like helps people with their body. Like my feedback and perception, the way that I see you is just much more as a life coach and a mentor, and a facilitator of sorts, opposed to that. I don't know how you're receiving that, or why
Yeah.
this is coming up, but that's what's coming up. Is like, it's interesting that you went there because like I personally don't even really like see that in you anymore.
Yeah. No, I actually completely agree with you. I think it's an interesting thing for me to say. And even as I say it, I wonder like, is that even still a part of who I am? And I guess it is just one component. And I'm definitely like a guide, a mentor, a magician, an alchemist, a
Yes,
spiritual
get it.
guide.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
before anything to do with any sort of training component.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the main things is I've just like taken so much of that practice because it's just one vehicle. It's just one, you could call it a trade. It's my night job. But even now in the quarantine, it's pretty much, it's just all mentorship and virtual medicine at the moment. So
Mm,
yeah, I just bring it up because it still is a piece of me, and I still have that ability to like read bodies, listen to bodies, understand bodies, and
mm,
focus on the whole package. Because everyone's got actual health goals, but they're so like embedded into the entire puzzle of your life.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you for all of that. Um, did you say virtual medicine? Is that what you
I
said?
do believe that's what I said.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. I have in the past called it social media medicine,
Mm.
but virtual medicine sounds like sexier to me. I might start,
Yeah,
I might
take it.
start saying that. Can you share a little bit about what that is, what that looks like, and how you are showing up? Because that's how I know you. We haven't actually had the opportunity to be in the flesh together.
Hmm.
So I only know you in your virtual medicine. So I would love for you to share a little bit about that.
Yeah. What does the virtual medicine look like? You know, for right now, as a part of my life coaching practice, um, I thrive in like the one-on-one containers more than anything. And I love groups and I need groups, but there's something about my skill set, my ability to kind of perceive a person's energy and play with it and give form to it and talk about it and penetrate it, that is potent. And so for a lot of people, it's kind of like the analogy I use is like in Christmas time when you pull out the Christmas lights and they are so damn tangled and it takes you like hours to sort of like figure out how to get them apart. I almost see that that's what I'm doing with people's spirits. So there's like people express this tangled series of words about what's going on in their life, the things that they're feeling, the problems they might be facing. And then with my help and my reflection, and typically it's just a lot of reflecting, so I just show people kind of
Mhm.
what's there, but in a different verb, in a different verbiage. We sort of untangle the whole thing until we get just a beautiful stream of lights.
Mm. Mm. I love your analogies. I'm like, do me, do me. What is, what is my virtual medicine? How do you see it?
Oh man, well, I could go there. Yeah, you, man, I don't even know where I'd begin with the analogies, but you have this voice and this presence that is the divine feminine. I mean, you are the embodiment of that in its form. You're like a flowing water, but at the same time, like a grounded earth. Like you know how to be received and receive in equal power. And it's magical. I
Oh,
think you're magical.
thank you. That really means a lot. You are magical as well. And before we started this call, I shared with you mostly my intention was to share the divine masculine form that you are with people because I respect and honor that in you so much. And there are so many conversations that you and I have had that I kind of wish I hit the record button.
Hmm.
So it's cool to be here, even though it's a little bit of a different energy in this container for the podcast opposed to our one-on-one conversations. But I love how we flow together
Hmm.
and how we can hold space for one another. And I really love having you in my life and you being such a dear friend and brother and just soul family, serious soul family, you know.
Yeah.
Um, it's amazing how much space like I can hold for you and then 30 seconds later you can be like holding a really powerful space for me as well. And we are able to hold each other and just kind of drop super deep into like whatever the fuck, like
Yeah.
whatever the fuck it is. And it's
Yeah.
so powerful and transformative. And I'm like, I love the people I have in my life and I love you.
Oh man, well, I received the hell out of that. And I love you too, Serena. But that's the dance though. I mean, you hit it on the head. Like what we're doing, I think, is like spiritual soldiers out on the front line is like developing that dance between the masculine and feminine. And the whole idea is just how well can you receive and how vulnerably can you be received. And so like, yeah, we've both definitely had our share of crying in each other's virtual arms.
Mm-hmm. So I would love to hear more about how to embrace the divine masculine and what has that journey been like for you to come into alignment with that divinity within,
Mm.
maybe some challenges or just whatever comes up because I really see you as one of the most powerfully divine masculine that is in my field. And so it's one of my favorite things about your person. So I would love for you to just share more about that.
Mm. Yes. So what comes up for me is, well, first of all, how insane of a journey the whole thing has been. So these are definitely skills that can be honed, and like because the language can be so interesting, right? You tell someone like, what is the dance of your masculine energy like inside of you, right? It's almost, it's
Like, I
very
don't
hard.
fucking know.
Yeah, like what the hell does that mean? Yeah, like and so it's, but the, and then the funny thing is that the masculine energy itself, to me, one word describes it, and it's penetrative.
Mm,
And I would say that the thing that's coming up for me right now is I just had my first call as a co-captain of a men's group that I'm a part of. So I'm actually a part of the Rising Man men's group, and it's pretty close to our sphere of people. So some of your listeners may know. And we change captains every 3 months. And one of the things that we do in that group is a style of questioning that we call the interview. And the interview is where a man does not give another man advice, a man simply asks questions.
mhm,
And one of the things that I've realized is that that masculine energy, again, is all about penetration. And so we all, to some degree, have these masks that we wear. And I think that a masculine force knows how to penetrate it and get to the vulnerability, get to the squishy parts, get to the spirit, you know, the essence of things. And so that can look like very direct questioning. It even looks like a little bit of discomfort. So an example of this, you know, there was a guy who we were talking with, and I won't name any names or anything, but he was expressing that he was having some, you know, a bit of a drinking addiction at the moment.
mm,
And you know, one of the things we got to the root of was just the lack of structure in his life. And there was, you know, some problems just due to his lifestyle, and it was very social. And so, you know, I simply asked him, I said, well, can you drink 6 days a week? Can we just start with six? Will you drink? Are you going to be okay if you drink 6 days a week? You know? And he was like, oh man, I don't know. Like, cause what day is it going to be? I mean, if it's like, what if I'm doing something that day? I'm with friends.
mhm,
And I was like, you know, but I continued to get him back to that space of discomfort. I just wouldn't let him escape. What day will you choose to not drink? And even some of the other brothers in the call wanted to step in, and one kind of did. Hey, no matter what you pick, man, it's going to be okay. Like, we'll be here, we'll receive you. Like, no worries, we'll support you. And that, you know, that was kind of, he wanted to step in and be a little compassionate. But for me, I was just dialed in. I'm like, you're not going to leave this call without a decision, without one day that you're going to choose to just not drink. And
mhm.
it doesn't matter even if you drink that day. What matters is that you make the decision, get the feedback, and come back to the brothers again and tell us what happened.
Yeah. Well, I see that as like structure and a commitment, which is very much in addition to the form of the interview and the experience that you were having. It's
Mm.
also masculine energy as well. That's how I view it anyway.
Yeah, yeah. There's a sense of you know, because it can almost, it's hard because I don't like to necessarily say like I love archetypes and playing with them, and I wouldn't say that the masculine archetype is more the warrior, because I think the feminine can also embody the warrior as well.
Mhm.
But there is that like with the warrior energy comes the weaponry, right? The shield of no, and the sword of yes, and the sword is that penetrative force. So there's just a link there. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. So, what
Mm.
has been one of the biggest challenges for you in stepping forward into who you are now and this masculine,
Yeah.
divine warrior man?
Hmm. So growing up, and this is, I would bet, quite common for people listening, but I didn't have a very powerful masculine force growing up. My dad worked a lot, and I basically only grew up around my mom and my sisters. And you know, I didn't have any role model of what it looked like. And so one of the things is that and I naturally, I'm a very, very sensitive person. Like life touches me, uh, and I feel it.
Mm-hmm.
I've always had a hard time putting up big walls, big barriers, because to me, I felt so close to life itself. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think the big challenge is because naturally, again, I'm quite an accommodating person. I'm quite sensitive. I'm very conscious and aware of the needs of the environment around me. And so it's been the shift of instead of enmeshing myself with the environment that I'm in, can I instead imprint my own energy on the environment and maybe make it tune to me? And so it's been that to me has been a model that lets me think of myself as an emitting presence that other people can tune to. And why wouldn't they want to? You know, why can't I build myself up to be such a radiant or energetic or alluring and delicious light that people wouldn't want to like then magnetize towards.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And that's like the ideal, right? Is learning
Hmm.
how to embrace the entire process and shine as bright as possible. I made a post recently about how light workers come from darkness,
Hmm.
and it's the challenges that we face and how we move through them that really defines our character moving forward, in my experience and in my opinion. And so I really acknowledge you for all of that. And I also think that it may or may not be one of the reasons why I personally am so attracted to you and your light, because um, I thrive on vulnerable conversations and people who can show up in that space. And in this world, at least as far as it is today, it's more rare for humans to fully embrace their vulnerabilities and their sensitivities and their challenges. And so I love that you can show up in the face of that and embrace the full spectrum of who you are, be it emotional, be it penetrative, be it whatever it is that is coming forward as you. And that's like the medicine, is just showing up fully.
Mm.
Showing up is more than half of the battle,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah. They say the marker, if there's any actual label to put maybe on the masculine energy, it's relaxed confidence. That's
Mm.
that's that's kind of the model that you're going for. And I made a post myself lately. Let's see if I can get it right. I said that vulnerability is indeed what filters the relaxed and confident from the fragile and wounded. And it's
Ooh,
not
yeah.
necessarily like a matter of right and wrong, but whatever is underneath does deserve to be seen.
Yeah. Ooh, I love that. It reminds me of, so my like power word for this year is grounded vulnerability,
Mm,
because oftentimes throughout my life, my vulnerability frequency was very high and very like chaotic. And like, I would face the fear because I'm courageous as fuck and do it anyway, despite where my energy was and what I was feeling and being vulnerable and sharing. And so this year, I'm in a very balanced place in my body. And so I really want to fully embody, like even more, like the deepest that I could go, grounding into my vulnerabilities. Because the thing about being vulnerable and sharing is like, everything is okay. Like everything that you feel is okay. It is a part of you. It exists. It's here to be seen, to be felt. And that's how you grow.
yes, I
Mhm.
love it. Grounded vulnerability. Yeah,
It
yeah.
comes this imagery really quick of like like a tree, for example, its roots in the earth. The deepest that the most raw root is, then the higher the tree can grow.
I love it. That's like the as as above, so below. It's like the deeper you can go down, then the further you can extend out.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. I like that a lot. Grounded vulnerability. Yeah, I would actually say that vulnerability is probably like one of my top two values. Like
Mhm.
I'm like you, and I think this is why we get along so well too, is I thrive off of vulnerable conversations. And like a part of the I think the penetrative force that I admire about myself is that obviously you can't go in there and just slice at people's walls and say let me in, be vulnerable. Like you can't do that, that you have to have a little bit of finesse about it. But that's where sort of like the style of an individual can come into play about how you choose to maybe open up. Because really, most people, from what I've found, are just waiting for an opportunity to be vulnerable. And
Mhm.
like if you can present them with you, more often than not, they'll present you with them.
Yeah. So it feels important to say that you absolutely can go in slicing at people's world,
Sure.
but it's just more than likely not going to be received well. They're not going to want to open up if you're like, yeah, yeah, you know? But you absolutely can. And sometimes that may be the best approach, depending on the
Mm,
energies that are interfacing with one another and the circumstances that are surrounding it, you know?
right.
Um, but yeah, I agree with all of that. And it's funny because in my head, I'm like thinking of the next, question that I could possibly ask in this moment. And I was holding the question like, well, Zach, what is the most vulnerable thing that you could share right now?
I want to know if that's exactly how you were holding it. And is that how your inner monologue sounds? Is she
No,
kind of like that? Oh,
no,
well, Zach.
no, no. Um, no, it was definitely going to be more soft, but I just thought it was funny that that was
Yeah.
what I was planning on doing next. And you're like, you can't just ask people to be vulnerable.
Interesting. Well, no, it is. Well, the question itself, that's an interesting question. And I've never maybe actually even used that question because
Mhm.
it's, I don't know. I'm trying to think of that because, well, first there's the answer itself, which it can put someone on the spot and have them shield up, which is kind of interesting.
Mhm.
And you're never really trying to get, it's not like a general sense. Usually you're not looking for people to be vulnerable generally. You're looking for it to be vulnerable specifically, like in a container
Mhm.
or with a relative to whatever topic you're about. So, what's the most vulnerable thing I could open up to right now? I don't even know what that would look like. All I know is that I'm sitting here as vulnerable as I can be, allowing you to be the penetrative one.
Mm. Well, thank you for that. I
Mhm.
appreciate it. And I welcome all parts of you and hold all parts of you with love. And I love playing. I love playing with you and playing on this podcast. It's really fun. Um, so for me, is it okay if I kind of share like what happened the last time I asked this question?
Yes.
Okay. So the last time that I asked this question, it was with a man, and I asked what the most vulnerable thing was that he could share with me at that moment. And he shared like a very deep, you know, childhood trauma. And he asked me the question, and the most vulnerable thing for me in that moment was that I felt like I needed to fart and I was holding it in. And that felt so scary and vulnerable for me to share. And just the contrast of it was like mildly uncomfortable, like his answer to my answer. But it's like,
Right.
vulnerability is a funny thing. It's going to show up differently in different circumstances and different, between different people. And because if I had that conversation with you, maybe that wouldn't have been my most vulnerable thing that I could share.
Yeah.
So
And maybe you would have just farted without saying a word.
who knows? Who knows? But it feels important to share because it doesn't have to always be like a deep childhood trauma.
Right.
And what's vulnerable for one person may or may not be the same for another person. So I just
Mm.
wanted to share that and kind of get your insight if you had any.
Yeah. Well, I think that you said it beautifully because I certainly didn't expect you to say that. But that does show a certain juxtaposition between like what we usually conceive of as vulnerable. And, so in your frame, it just seems to be that vulnerability means just speaking what's presently true and like what's on your heart or in your head. And that's why I like using words like that. Like, I'm noticing that, or I can tell that my body is feeling, or, I'm having this thought right now that,
Mm.
because those are like present moment vulnerabilities.
Mhm. Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's an interesting reflection. I'm gonna marinate on that. Like, I would love to re-examine what exactly vulnerability means to me, especially as I'm on the path of transforming that and, reshaping it and shape shifting it. Um, that's a beautiful reflection. Thank you.
Hmm. Yes. Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Mm.
Marinade is such a good word.
Yeah, it definitely is. I'm breathing into that right now. Mm.
Hmm.
So I would love to invite us into the presence and into um, a vulnerable space. And in all seriousness, I would love to actually ask you, what is the most vulnerable thing that you can share
Hmm.
or that you're willing to share?
Right. Hmm. Well, I do think that given what we just talked about, the definition itself, so let me search, like, what does vulnerability actually mean to me? And hmm, yeah, yeah, that's it. That is it. It is just about the presence, your current state of presence. And because vulnerability is like exposure, and
Mm.
exposure, as you said, doesn't have to be inherently negative. Sometimes to be exposed is a good thing or a desirable thing, or yeah. So what would it be? I mean, I like what's on my heart and what's present is this interview right now, and the feelings I have surrounding it are play and like the attraction that I do have towards you in this space, and the nervousness surrounding whether or not I'm going to give grand articulate answers to your questions, like, can I sit in a moment of silence stumbling over my words?
Mm.
And the answer is yes. Like, I have no choice but to.
Mm.
um, but I do love putting on the, it's not even a persona, but I love being perceived as like an articulate wizard, right? The magician is my
Mm.
thing. So I think the most vulnerable thing I could share is that underneath that like life coachy alchemist person, I'm just a super nerd that loves to like play around
Mhm. Mhm.
and make
Oh
games out of things.
yes. Oh my goodness. I love it so much. Thank you. Thank you for sharing and going there. I really honor you and your answer, and it makes me really excited because I spent a couple of days quarantined with someone who's safely quarantined, and it was like a 2-day retreat. There was ceremonies for everything, like saging things, prayer. It was vulnerable conversations all day. It was so good. And I kind of realized through that experience that the people I desire in my life the most, that I want to cultivate like really strong relationships with, because I'm calling people in more, is people who can geek the fuck out on life with me. Like, I love being a super nerd about life. That is the most exciting thing to me, is to geek out about life.
Yes, I'm all in there. I love it. It's beautiful. I mean,
Mhm.
why not? Because we do live in the age of information, and there's like, if you have a passion, usually that's just a compass. And then it's all about like diving in to what's there and like learning about it all. And yeah, much of the spiritual aspects of life and all the ceremonies and rituals and symbolism, they do happen in the upper level of chakras when you're playing with them, right? Or maybe even the around the heart. I guess they can go into the belly too. Maybe that's not true, but I suppose the way I'm viewing it, like, because to game something is to conceptualize it, and for me, that's like you're setting parameters and rules and ways to progress and level up, and how's your skills and where are we going to battle, you know?
Mm. Absolutely. And I think for me, because I embody this as well and visualize this as well, um, you get to play in life. And I think most people forget that, or they lose sight of it. As adults, we're not supposed to, quote unquote, play. We're supposed to be serious and do adult things and, follow the line of others. And it doesn't actually have to look like that or feel like that or exist like that. You don't have to exist like that. You can play even mundane things. Like, for example, this is one of my favorite life games, and I got to do this at over the couple days I spent away at my mini retreat.
Mm.
Um, so, for example, when I have chores, I will write all the chores down on little pieces of paper and fold them up and put them in a hat. And then I select the chore that I'm going to do. And it's like, woo, okay, we're doing things. It's fun. We're making a game out of it. Like, I do that all the time for shit. And it is so fun. And it just makes the experience of doing chores more fun?
Mm, I like that. I like that a lot. I may have to experiment with that. Like strip up all your to-do lists and throw them in a hat and then pick the one. Yeah. Yeah, why not? Because you're
Mhm.
leaving it to fate. You're like, what is it shall I do today first?
Yeah, so
I
that's like
like
a
it.
surface level life game. And then like a higher level life game, which is more what I think you were speaking to, is
Mm,
playing with conversations is something that I personally love to do. So, speaking my heart, sharing my truth, not being attached to like how I will be received or what the response is, not, releasing those expectations for the sake of playing with another human, playing with my words, playing, showing up as myself and just making it lighter. Like when you're attached to something, it's a little more heavy. And so when I can
mm.
approach, challenging conversations like, okay, I'm doing this for myself, I'm doing this to play in this game of life. And that's my intention, is to play, to grow.
Right. This kind of reminds me just a little bit of something, an Alan Watts quote, and I'll see if I can get it mostly right. But he says something like, imagine that you say to someone says to you, "I love you," and
Mm.
then you say back to them, "Are you serious?" And he says, "That's almost the wrong word because who wants to be loved gravely? Do you love me seriously?" He said, "No. He's like, the correct thing that you should do is replace the word serious with the word sincere. Are you sincere
Mhm.
that you love me?" Right? There's a detached, like, little bit of lightness to it. Because, and I think that's the whole thing is like you said, as adults, we're supposed to be serious, but like the true, I think, play element comes when you are able to do the things that you do sincerely, not seriously.
Mhm.
Makes it much more fun.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And another thing that I absolutely adore about you is your ability to play in other ways too. Like, for example, we both enjoy freestyle rapping and dancing. And I think that that is so, so fun. And I invite, people listening to just challenge themselves and to try something like that. So I'm wondering if you can share a little bit about that form of play and how it
Mm.
has impacted you, because yeah, it feels important to share.
Yeah. So this may have started 3 or 4 years ago for me, where I was still like actively lifting a lot of weights, and that was my main source of expression. But I started to fall in love with the popping and waving and animation style of dance. I just saw a video and I was like, what is this type of body and space manipulation that I'm witnessing?
Mm,
Like the control, it looks like they're water, they're literally fluid. And it's like every joint and every body and every muscle is working congruently to form this language without words. And like, so I actually just began to mimic. What I do is I mimic people that I like until I see what style like fits me best. And so I started to, I just fell in love. And at this point I'll probably like never lift weights again, to be honest. I just dance. And I find it to be, because that's what goes back to that space of vulnerability, which is just to be exposed. And when you're dancing, especially with like no choreography, you're just allowing your genuine spirit to be seen, to be expressed, to be heard. And
mm,
like the value of that when it comes to like popping yourself into a flow trigger, remembering who you are and why you're doing certain things,
mm,
like setting yourself up for a little bit of fire for your day,
mm,
like there's nothing better
mm.
than dancing. And yeah, I was like, I agree that there's, it seems to be that people in our sphere love to dance and freestyle rap. Now the rap thing, that's new to me. That one's an edge, and it's super scary that I'm trying to pop into, but it's
That you
it's
are popping in,
that I am popping
are
into.
popping into it.
Yes, popping into it.
I know, pop, lock, and drop it.
Pop, pop.
Thank you, because my head was going there, and
Yes. It's good.
yeah, wow. So thank you for sharing that about your dancing journey. I know I personally resonate, and I'm sure others can resonate too. And there's so many beautiful reflections in that story. Um, I love how you spoke of just like opening that channel of flow. And that's very much what I imagine myself to do when I'm freestyle rapping and dancing too. It's like, number one, you're moving energy, you're moving your body, and even your words are energy. They're a sound frequency. So you're moving energy out of your body that needs to be released, that may or may not be trapped. Um, and then also for the freestyle rapping, this is kind of cool. I never know what I'm gonna say, and, like, that makes me nervous because 'cause I'm like, "Serena, you might offend somebody or say some shit, I don't know." Like, that's what keeps me on the edge of myself when I'm freestyle rapping is, like, what am I gonna say? And then getting out of the way of that, but what I'm learning to do and kinda shift into so that it's more play and less, like, freaking the fuck out on the inside is is, I'm whatever words come through for me to say, like, I see that as being whatever residual, like, whatever is hanging out on my field, like, on my energetic field. And so whatever is there, it's like that's what I'm speaking to, whatever needs to be spoken to. And then it's like I'm kind of clearing that channel, like opening it up,
Hmm.
and then I get into it, then I really get into it, and then I'm just like channeling as I freestyle. And that doesn't happen yet as often as I would love for it to, you know? So the more that I
Yeah,
practice and like get into that flow state, then I trust the more I'll be able to do that as with anything in life.
right. You know, there's a small hack I've been utilizing. So I have this staff that was given to me as a gift about a year ago from a friend. And what I do is when I dance, I sometimes I'll warm up by just doing some basic spins, like you see the ROTC people doing with their guns. I'll
Mm-hmm.
do a couple in the front and a couple in the back, and then I'll start dancing while I'm spinning the staff. And this tiny repetition of the spins allows me to anchor my mind to that movement pattern, and then frees up my whole body for the expression of the actual dance. So I found that like the hardest thing, or the reason why people don't start doing things like that are very expressive in nature, is because the mind is getting in the way. And so I haven't developed like the best methods or best techniques, but the idea is to just find an anchor for your mind. So for me, again, just being able to do these little spins, and it frees me up to actually dance to the way that I want to with the music.
Mhm. That is beautiful. Um, so, what comes up for me in listening to that is I'm examining my freestyle rapping and applying like just that reflection to my experience. And what comes up is what I usually do when I notice my mind getting in the way is I step into the vulnerability of it. And I'm just like,
Mm.
what the fuck am I thinking? I don't know, but I'm just going to keep spitting. Here we go.
Yes.
I like address it and make it known.
Right.
And it's, whew, yeah, I guess I didn't realize like that is pretty vulnerable to do in that space, but I like it.
Yes. Yeah. Find an anchor. I like that though. Actually, I watched a video today because this is how I learn everything, YouTube videos. And it said that one of the best ways to practice rap is to actually not rhyme. Force yourself to just talk to the beat of the flow and
Mhm.
don't rhyme anything. And what's going to happen is your body is going to naturally find words that rhyme, and the rhymes will just start coming up. So kind of do it in reverse, right? Rather than getting hung up on not being able to rhyme a verse or a line, like intentionally do that and
Mm.
almost train yourself,
Ooh, yeah. I can't wait to play with that. I haven't
right?
really
I
practiced
haven't either.
that. So when I first started freestyling, some tips that were given to me were one, to just rhyme words, to just sit there and be like flower, power, hour, and just like keep going just when you're just hanging around the house or when you're on a walk or in the car or whatever, just so you can start to like have that in your arsenal. And then also freestyling to like whatever you look at, whatever crosses your path, or having someone popcorn words to you that you can then rhyme about. And just getting comfortable with like shifting topics and shifting energy and like shifting, whatever it is that you're doing in your freestyle. Um, and that has been really helpful and powerful, but I love learning new practices and new tools and new things to play with. So I'm going to play with that for sure. And I'm excited.
Good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah. I rapped the other day for the first time without music on in the background, like very seriously. I sat down to freestyle. And it was really cool to listen back to. It was a new experience because I got so used to freestyling with music, you know.
Mm.
So that was a fun thing for me to practice too.
Yes. I like. I also heard that like doing things in categories can be helpful. So you give yourself like I don't know 3 to 5 things to cycle from, and like what I was doing this morning was the elements. So it was just like fire. That's the burning desire. Water. That's emotion. It's riding like the ocean. Like
Mm-hmm.
stuff like, and then you're able to just go like water, fire, air, earth, whatever, and then you can like
Yeah.
yeah. So certain elements.
Because then when you're freestyling, you got that in the arsenal. It's like,
Exactly. You
okay,
can just swap to the next category. Yeah.
ooh, level up, level up, level up. That's what we're doing right now.
I learned quick, dude. I'm like 4 days in right now,
Oh
trying to
man,
accelerate it.
I am so excited to be a part of your journey and to witness that
Yes.
and to play with you in that as well. It's a lot of fun. I think it's really interesting, the freestyling, because it is vulnerable and raw as fuck to do. Like, I still will like sweat. I think I messaged you this the other day. Sometimes I will just like be sweating balls with freestyling because I'm so nervous. But also think about all of that energy and emotion that's getting released and just like how powerful that is. And you feel so good and so like high after doing it.
Yeah. Hmm. That's why I actually like, so, and this might be a small part of that game element, which is that I find things like, to me, vulnerability is like a muscle, even though I think a lot of things are like muscles that you can train. And so, what are the how do you get your reps in? So
Mm.
like if you want to be an authentic person, like how are you getting your reps in? Like what are the things you're doing on the daily that allow you to show up and just express yourself?
Mm.
Like, so yeah, so for me, like dance is the way I practice expression, vulnerability, rap, freestyling is the same thing. It's exposing,
Mm.
and like last year I was in a public speaking group, and
Mhm.
like I was afraid and scared and nervous, but it didn't matter because I knew that the purpose was to get my reps in of being exposed.
Mhm. Oof,
So
yeah, that is some good shit. Wow. Um, Definitely going to start using that as well, because something that I say to my clients, to my spiritual life coaching clients, is you get to flex your muscles. Like you get to flex this muscle. And so I'd love to incorporate in, like, hey, are you getting your reps in? Like, that is super dope. Thank you for that. Um, wow. I feel like I'm like learning so much from you right now.
hey, yes, good. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, that's the biggest thing, and that's like because yeah, as far as I'm concerned, that is the number one thing that we get paralyzed from, is because whatever it is that you want, you have to you have to distill it down to the thing you can do to like build that muscle. So how are you getting your reps in? Like that's like such an important question for people who are trying to do anything. Like
Mhm.
what does you going to the gym for a higher level of consciousness look like, right? Or to be a more authentic person, or to build your life coaching practice, or there's just so many different examples of things that we desire that got to get your reps in. You just can't avoid it.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically a philosophy
Yeah,
of a way to live life and play with life, and it can be applied to literally anything.
exactly.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that. Whew, feels good. Feels really good. Mm.
Yeah, this is my favorite combo. Like, and that's one of the things I love the most about sharing space with you, is it's like there's the harmony between play and like dropping codes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Um, Thank you for that, because that's like that's what I want. I want to like
Hmm.
be this playful, human that also is like,
Well, that's exactly who you are.
thank you. I appreciate and I receive. And I would love to chat a little bit about our personal connection and share with, my listeners, like, why are you here? Why are we here right now?
Yeah, it did all start with the leadership tribe, didn't it?
I think so.
Yeah. So there was a mutual friend who had invited us into a Facebook group together. And just as far as I remember, it was just the luck of the draw. Like he went on and just said, add friend, add friend, add friend, add friend, add person, like as many people around our sphere as possible into this container. And, just so happens I'm quite open to experience that. I was like, okay, yes. And, it was around that time too that a friend of mine, I had actually taken some coaching from Kevin Oros. I worked with him for a little bit, and I think most people know him. And then I was also introduced to Sam Lotus. And so, like, that sphere of people, in addition to the leadership tribe, um, just connected me with so many like-minded souls.
Mhm,
And of course, as we do, we end up becoming attracted to or finding the people who we are most congruent with, who sort of
mhm,
speak our tune, ride to our dance, our
mhm,
frequency. And you just happen to be one of those people that I was like, oh, we have to keep this going. Like
mhm,
this is good.
mhm.
So, and that's what we've done. I mean, it's been at least a year and a half at this point, maybe
Yeah,
2 years, something. Yeah.
yeah, somewhere in there. The internet is a beautiful world and a beautiful place, and I really try to embrace embrace that space with love and like hold that, because so many can view like the internet or they can like discredit people meeting online. And what I love about the sphere of people and like this world, that we are creating is like how deep we are able to go virtually and how connected we can feel,
Mm.
in honor of not yet meeting in flesh. And so I love the world that we are creating together. And I love that we're connected in it and we share with beautiful humans in that space. And both of those people, too, that you mentioned, Kevin and Sam, they're amazing people. If you're listening, please
Mm.
look them up. They're beautiful coaches. um, so I feel like, yeah, we met online and it was the luck of the draw. And I feel so lucky to have met you. And I know I personally have grown so much through our connection and the conversations that we've had.
Yeah, that's entirely reciprocated. Yeah, like I said, you were probably one of the first people, if not the first person, to kind of embody the word divine feminine for me. I think that you had a certain um, unapologetic presence about who you were, what you wanted, and what you wanted your life to look like, and how you speak the things that are on your mind, even the emotional sides of it, with such a conviction.
Mm. Yeah, I would say that you also define what I would say divine masculine energy is, which is beautiful. So I'm really honored to share space with you, however that space shows up. And honestly, like whatever we're doing in that space, like freestyling or on a podcast or on one-on-ones or in a group, like wow, I feel so honored and blessed to share those beautiful spaces with you. And I just want to say thank you for showing up and being vulnerable and embracing who you are, embracing presence, and being here right now with us. Thank you.
I receive all of that, and you are welcome.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything that is on your heart that you want to share with those who are listening before we wrap up today?
Hmm. Nothing that we've already not covered. I think we've touched on so many beautiful things. I think that there certainly isn't even one takeaway. I would say that that purpose is to just find a way to get yourself congruent and get your reps in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Don't be afraid to express.
yeah, exactly. Um, and if one does feel fear, what would you advise that person to do or how to approach it?
To not demonize it, not shame it, or shame yourself for feeling it, and lean in. And that's kind of the answer to any emotion that you feel, is to lean into it, because your emotions are messages, and those messages are there to bring you some sense of wisdom or clarity or direction.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're feeling fear, the answer is to lean in.
Mm. Yes.
Ask what it needs. Mm.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so much for sharing your heart and your wisdom. Um, I love you.
I love you.